Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special International Women's Day. I'll start there by saying Happy International Women's Day. I can't think of a better way to be celebrating, not only with my awesome guests here, who I will be introducing in just a few short minutes, but also, of course, celebrating the release of Underplayed, an amazing documentary. For those who are joining us, whether it's, you're a fan of some of the artists that are here, maybe you're just stumbling on this on Twitch and you don't know what Underplayed is, I highly recommend you stick with us because we are going to have here a conversation with some wonderful folks in the dance music space and also the director of this film, but also there's going to be a premiere of the film happening right here on the Amazon Music Twitch channel. So definitely lock in, go grab your popcorn or whatever it is that you need, but you have to be staying here hopefully for the evening. For those who don't know, Underplayed is a documentary on the gender disparity and inequality issues in the world of electronic music, as told through the lens of women, pioneers, and leading artists, as well as industry members who are championing the change for the next generation. So Underplayed was actually an official selection of both the 2020 Tribeca Film Festival, as well as the Toronto International Film Festival. And it features a really big handful of amazing artists and talents like Nervo, Alice in Wonderland, Louisa, as well as some of the faces that you see right here around me, REZZ, TokiMonsta, Tygapaw, who are joining us today for a conversation alongside director Stacey Lee. This film is really special, not only because it is officially releasing today, air horn, Monday, March 8th as a, coinciding with International Women's Day. But, we are going to be talking about some of the topics that are addressed all throughout this film right here. And I'm really excited because what I loved about this film is that, dance music has been talking about the conversation of inequality and, women's role in the industry and in the space for so long. And I think it is definitely an effort worth celebrating, but I think it's probably best told by those who live it, pioneer it, and handle that change on their own. And I think that Stacey, you did such a wonderful job with this film. I hope everyone sticks around to check it out. And also, I will say, if you watch the premiere later on and you want to revisit the film and you want to check it out again, it will be available also on Prime Video and through the Amazon Music app, so you can check it out afterwards as well. Before we get started with introductions and the full conversation, I do want to point out that you'll be seeing a couple links dropped in the chat as well. You'll be seeing links to a playlist of songs that actually inspired Underplayed that has been curated by Stacey herself. That will be available on Amazon Music, as well as a soundtrack, which was specially curated by Kate Simcoe, who is a revered composer and electronic music producer from Chicago. So super, super special. So without further ado, I will do a brief introduction of myself and fellow folks here and let them get to talking because I am not the star here. I'm talking way too much already, but my name is Valerie Lee. I am a music and culture host and journalist. I have spent many, many years in the dance music space, both as a fan and also someone who has been lucky enough to make a career out of it, talking to artists, telling amazing stories. And I spent a couple of years as an editor at Mixmag, which is a publication dedicated to the electronic music and nightlife space. I contribute to Billboard Dance, and I also hosted Coachella Live, and really am blessed to always be talking to amazing creatives like some of the ones that you see right here. And before I fully turn it over to them, I just want to say that I feel so lucky to be here moderating this panel because throughout my career, I have actually been able to organically and authentically come into interviews and come across each of these artists who are so special. REZZ was one of the very first actually major artist interviews I did when I joined Mixmag. REZZ, I'm not sure if you know this, but you were one of the first major interviews that I did. And I was so excited to kind of show my UK teammates and the world who you were as a talent. And this was back in 2016 when you were, definitely on your way up, but maybe it hadn't hit that, huge burst that you have now and beyond, obviously. So it is so awesome to be here with you again. Toki, I've had the honor of co-hosting a stream with you on a channel called Lost Resort TV for the past year or so. And it's just so wonderful to see you. You're just like one of those magical people who is so talented at everything you do, not only music, but also, art, fashion, look at what you're wearing, and also, of course, doodling doodling, as we've talked about earlier. And then Tygapaw, I know that I came across you early on at my time at Mixmag as well, because you were one of the artists that we sort of hand selected for this awesome project that we were given the reins by Smirnoff as a brand to kind of pick and choose a couple of amazing, unique rising star talents. And I'm so glad that we found you, because it has been incredible to watch you develop as an artist, create this amazing, powerful, unique sound and message behind your music. And of course, Stacey, for those who haven't seen the film yet, I actually made a cameo in it because Stacey invited me to speak a little bit about some of the artists and, just my experience as a woman in dance music, watching so many artists like yourselves ascend and take over. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. I think introductions would be great. Tell us a little bit about who you are. I know there's a lot of fans I'm already seeing in the chat, people shouting out all of your names. But for those who might not be familiar with you, maybe tell us a little bit about where you're from, what kind of music you make, and maybe a recent project that you're really excited about that you want people to go check out. So I will pass it first to Toki.
Oh, okay. Me first. So I'm an artist by the name of TokiMonsta. You'll hear a little bit of my story in the documentary. I am a music producer and DJ. I was nominated for a Grammy a couple seasons ago. I think it's like the same season again. It's sort of difficult to describe the kind of music I make, but I exist kind of in like rap, hip hop world and electronic world and somewhere in between. Yeah, and then I guess we'll talk more. That's it for now.
How about REZZ next?
First of all, Valerie, that intro was just outstanding. Goals to speak that fluidly on a day-to-day basis. My name's REZZ. I'm originally from Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, and I am a DJ producer. I kind of make this kind of eerie, ominous type of slow-paced music. I was originally inspired by deadmau5 and basically, I've been lucky enough to tour the planet doing what I do somehow, and I'm very grateful for it. And you'll see, I guess, quite a bit of my story in the documentary as well.
Awesome. And over to you, Tygapaw.
Yeah, as Tygapaw, and originally from Jamaica, and I live in Brooklyn. I've been living in Brooklyn for I think maybe it's 20 years now. I don't know, time flies. But I do a little bit more techno, electronic music, a bit experimental here and there. And I guess I work primarily within the underground. I haven't done super mainstream stuff yet, but I'm just happy to be a part of this beautiful film.
Awesome. And then last but certainly not least, Stacey.
Hi there, I'm Stacey Lee. I'm a filmmaker, originally from New Zealand. I now live in Los Angeles. I'm yet to make an album, but keep watching. It may happen. Being around these talented people for so long, maybe something will inspire me to pick up an instrument. I've been a filmmaker for the last decade. My journey has been, long and hard, much like the women that were presented in the film. And for me, I think this was a really exciting opportunity to kind of immerse myself in a world that's very different to my own, but, we share a lot of same experiences. And I really love to tell stories that elevate underrepresented voices. And this was a beautiful way to do that.
Definitely. Well, let's jump into the meat of the conversation. And I have a couple questions that I'm eager to hear your guys' thoughts on. The first being, as all of us have been, in and around the dance music space for several years now, I think that we definitely should acknowledge that we, as a collective dance music industry, fans, whatever, we spent a lot of years talking about the issue of inequality when it first came up. I don't even know, maybe it was 5-ish or so years ago. We spent a lot of time, whether it was trending on Twitter, these movements, even brands getting involved. And it started, as a movement to try and rectify the problem, bringing attention to the fact that we couldn't keep going this way, where we would have all these lineups with only men on it and not finding a way to balance things out. And then it sort of turned into an avalanche of pointing out the problem without really finding a progressive way forward. Personally, I remember seeing so many comments and hearing from so many artists that would do interviews. They were always so tired of talking about or being asked about being a female DJ, rather than, just having people ask about their art or their releases or whatever it was that they were excited to share with the world. And that's something, I kind of mentioned it in the intro, something that I really appreciated about Underplayed as a film was it took the approach of telling the stories of a group of really dynamic talents. Each of you here as individuals, and of course as musicians as well, are so different and have such great stories, who all just happen to be women. But I'm curious to know, for all of you, what has your experience been like as artists, watching and experiencing this equality conversation and movement happen within the dance music space? Feel free to jump in.
Somebody go first.
I'll go. I mean, it's I mean, we're all kind of like at a point where it feels like it's an exhausting conversation to have, but it's very important at the same time. And I think, by just like, I think everybody who's highlighted in the film has done their work in maybe implementing and trying to change some of that like very patriarchal structure that the electronic music industry has like perpetuated for a very, very long time. So I think, just like even I keep forgetting that I did like the Smirnoff Sound Collective, but even in that, I met a lot of like incredible artists, Nomi, Julia Gober, and that kind of like really helped to, like if you see, the change that you want to see, like if you start to see things that like, it's inspiring in itself. If you get to be in the same room with other really powerful and dynamic artists who just happen to be A5, it's just like it sets the precedent that it doesn't, gender shouldn't affect the, you being in a particular position or being able to aspire to be in a particular position within electronic music. So it's obviously like it's still like an obstacle that a lot of us still face, I think. But I think there's like slow progression towards more equality.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I think you're absolutely right with regards to it being an obstacle and a slow progression still. But I think with people leading with example and promoters finally, booking females or women as headliners and just doing it, just being a woman and just doing it and putting yourself out there and making music and releasing it and, being as confident in yourself and not letting anyone surrounding you influence you to not continue and to just keep moving forward. And more people just setting an example is going to continue the avalanche, if you will, of women that will continue to just flourish. And I'm feeling rather hopeful. And I think that the future looks bright. And I think Stacey and everybody involved in the film have a very large reason to thank for even starting the conversation, because I think even having a conversation about it in the first place is a great place to start,
For me, I've been doing this for quite a while, and I've been subject to many interviews over the last decade, and it's been really palpable to feel the change and how I've been I guess, interviewed and the kind of language that people use. And I will say, hands down, there's two questions I get asked the most almost in every interview. The first one is, what does TokiMonsta mean? Because no one has any idea what my artist name means. And the second question is, what does it feel like being a female or a woman in a male-dominated industry? Second question, every single time. Actually, what I'm noticing now is I actually get asked that. I haven't been asked that recently. And the way I can tell that this climate is changing is, in the beginning, people would just ask me that. What does it feel like being a woman in a male-dominated industry? That's it. And they want me to say how terrible it is and all these things. But now people ask, if they ask that question, there's a second part. They ask me, what can we do? What can be done? What they are asking me, what change can be made that they can participate in, that the press can take on, they can disseminate this information so that everyone knows what to do and is not just aware of the issue at hand. What does it matter if we point it out if we don't do anything about it? So for me, I know that with, films like with this documentary, with the Annenberg study, a lot of information is being spread and shared, and that is allowing progress to happen. And that's something that I can say I've experienced as an artist over the last 10 years, and how I see things changing, because it's like way doper if you allow women and men to participate equally. You only get more amazing music, So yeah, that's my answer.
That's amazing to hear, because I feel like that's almost a direct result of even just people talking about it and making a fuss about it at first. For you, Stacey, obviously you haven't released your album yet, not quite coming from the artist side, but I have a feeling that from the film industry, it's probably very similar. From what I've seen as far as the conversation in the film industry, it's been a very similar movement of talking about this kind of representation as well. How has your experience been?
Yeah, 100%. And as I said before, that's so much what led me to make this film, is because if you don't even have to be a fan of electronic music in order to relate to what's going on here. It's really a kind of system-wide, society-wide kind of issue. The film industry is exactly the same. I think it's something like less than 10% of Hollywood box office films are directed by women, and what that means is that there's, we're only ever seeing a very small portion of the spectrum of possible creative ideas out there in the world. And I really wanted to explore with this film, being able to see what the parameters are, if you really are, the opportunities, if you really open that up. It's not talking about, dwelling on the notion of gender, putting talent first, showing craft first, showing how exceptionally entrepreneurial every single one of the people on this panel and in this film really are. They're all operating, whenever some kind of obstacle comes up, every single one of them has, created a community. If they weren't able to, in Tygapaw's instance, wasn't able to get a label, so she started her own, wasn't able to get a club night, started her own. And that for me is it's so inspiring for whoever's watching, because we're all going to face, the gender gap's not going to close in the next 100 years. So therefore, we all have to find ways in which to stay inspired, in which to keep fighting. And I think you touched on this, Toki, really nicely, is that it's also not just on us women to solve. It's actually all across the gender spectrum that really needs to get involved in order to transform this. Because once you start talking or observing the gender disparity, you really start to open up and see all the other disparities that are taking place. And I think as women, we have been underrepresented for so long, so we have a greater empathy towards those other voices which haven't been heard. And as a filmmaker, I get a platform. I had such a privilege to be chosen to make this film. And so therefore, it's my responsibility to obviously not only tell a story that elevates the female point of view or diverse points of view, but to also do that with my own crew, the people behind the cameras, who every single person here saw what our crews looked like. We were really championing, creative filmmakers, female filmmakers, diverse filmmakers, wherever we can, because that's important. I can't make a film on this subject matter and, do an about face behind the camera. And I'm incredibly proud of what we achieved, Yeah.
That was so well said. And actually, I kind of wanted to take a leaf out of your book, Stacey. I mentioned in the intro as well that what I really loved about this film is that you really just handed, obviously you were the one behind the lens, but you handed the reins to each of the artists here and those in the film to really tell their story, because every person here is so unique and powered through unique challenges to get to where they are. So I already see in the chat, it's going crazy with all of your fans. I saw this Tygapaw Hive, people talking about hydrating for REZZ and obviously shouting out Toki and your amazing outfit. But I think for, maybe across the fan bases, it would be awesome to kind of talk to each of you and go back to the beginning point. What was the instigator for each of you to begin pursuing music? Just because I think there's such magic in that moment of realization. So maybe right now we'll start with REZZ.
Love that for me. The reason I started making music is what you're asking?
Yeah, just kind of that moment, if you can recall back to, what was the moment that you realized that this was the path for you?
Sure. Well, I started DJing when I was like 15 and I DJed a high school dance, which was very random and insane. I kind of just like took the leap to just do that. And at that point, I didn't know that I was going to do this for a career. I thought it was just kind of like a fun little thing that I did. But I DJ'd for a little bit and played a couple random gigs like in Toronto downtown, like all for free, these like underground raves, and just like saw the most sketchiest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And at one point I was like, I don't know if this is actually what I'm going to do, but I mean, it's been fun. But then I went to a festival in LA called Hard Day of the Dead, where deadmau5 and Skrillex both headlined, and alongside a bunch of other people, Calvin Harris. There's just so many people that were really smashing it at the time and still are. And I remember like after I went to that show in LA, first of all, that was my first time ever traveling to the US and in LA, which was like completely eye-opening for me coming from a small city like Niagara Falls. So I remember when I came back home, I had gotten Ableton on my computer, and basically right then and there, I sat there and I was like, I am going to make music. And I think it was like maybe a month or so into making music, because the first few weeks of really starting anything is not particularly easy. So there was like some difficulty. And then after about a month, I completely fell in love with it. And it was like impossible for me to even desire staying away from my computer. So I was basically working on music every single day for like 10 hours a day for like a couple of years until things kind of started to kick off. And yeah.
Look at you now, right? What about you, Tygapaw?
I think from birth I wanted to make music. I don't know. Like I just notoriously heard Whitney Houston's voice, and I'm just like, how did I get into this thing? And my curiosity just kind of like led me, after coming to New York and going to art school, I just got into bands and was playing guitar in a few bands. And then, one of my bandmates just empowered me to make music, because like she was making like this really incredible like dubstep kind of like beats, and I was just like, how do you like produce? I was so intimidated by producing, because like she was using Pro Tools and I think Logic as well, and I was just like, the learning curve for me was just like, that's to learn like the software is a big obstacle. But I was just like, I was determined, because like I could write songs on my guitar, and I wanted to learn how to like record them and add, all the electronic elements to it to create a song. And it's the game changer is when I got a copy of Ableton. Just expose myself and be like, but
it's okay.
Everyone starts somewhere.
Relatable.
Yeah. So that was a long time ago. And Yeah, I got it, and it really opened up things for me because it's like a different way of, it's like no limitations. So you can kind of use the software however it is that it fits your workflow, like how you want to create. And I found that like having the page that has like just using a lot of like looping, because I used guitar loop pedal, so I understand that concept of like just being able to like put loops together. And that's it. It's so kind of like infectious and like really exciting to when you start to like make your first couple of beats. They're not going to be great, but I just remember putting out my first track on SoundCloud. I don't even know, maybe like 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, and yeah, it just kind of like then seeing that people were engaging with that, and I was just like, it's that it helps to just keep working, and then I just wanted to get to a point where I could feel confident enough to like make an EP and release music and perform it. And then I caught the DJing bug during that period as well. So it's like DJing really like shifted things for me, because then I had a stronger idea of like how to produce music, particularly to present in a club environment. And that is just how I sound. It's like became what it is today. So.
And the whole world is truly at your fingertips, huh? How about you, Toki?
In terms of like a moment where I thought I can make this a career, was probably when I got laid off from my job. So for me, I've been making music since a child. I had classical piano lessons. I always played the piano. I hated practicing. I didn't hate, but I didn't really enjoy playing classical pieces. I liked doodling on the piano, which was highly discouraged by my family. But I always wanted to create. And when I got into college is when I also downloaded like a cracked version of Fruity Loops, but I pay for my software now, so I think it's okay. Shout out Fruity Loops. That was my first thought. And then obviously I've been using Ableton for about a decade. And yeah, I never thought that it was possible for me to make a career out of music. I come from an immigrant family. It was not okay for your child to squander their hard efforts by being something as frivolous as a musician, And so I went to college. I was like, cool, I'm going to do something that's respectable in an industry that I like, that my parents are going to be proud of. So I did like business development, licensing stuff for a video game company. And I thought that was cool. And on the side, I would go to Low End Theory. I'd go out in LA, South LA. I'd play my beats. I was friends with people like Flying Lotus, and we had a scene, but nowhere. And at no point did I think that I could do this full time. I was like, cool, I have a day job. I don't have to rely on music. I get to do this just to have fun. And then I got laid off from my job, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to have to try this. At the point that I decided to make it a career, I was already having music played on the BBC, KCRW was showing me love. It was just clear that I had to do this. Like the universe was like, hey, let me get you fired right now so that you have to pursue music. And I had to assure my mom that this was something I was going to try out temporarily. And if it worked, it worked. And if it didn't, I'm at her mercy, whatever. I'll try to get a job, go to grad school, whatever. And yeah, I moved home for a year, and nothing kicks your ass more than living with your parents again. So within a year I was back out, and I was like, I'm not living here. I'm going to do this full time. So I've been doing it full time ever since. If you ever want good motivation in any regard, go live at home with your parents again. That's my number one piece of advice.
That's your end all advice. I'm so glad I asked that question, because I was like looking at the chat, and someone in there said, I feel so crazy inspired listening to your guys' origin stories. And I feel like that's just kind of the root of it, right? Is seeing the representation. Your stories are each so relatable. It's like you got let go from a job, you downloaded a cracked piece of software because you were just trying to explore it and get, learn how to do it. And then REZZ went to a rave and got inspired. Like those are the three most relatable stories I've ever heard of. And I feel like that's, again, just kind of the beginning points of when someone else sees it and sees that it's possible. Hopefully there's someone out there watching and thinking to themselves, like, I could do that too. So thank you for sharing all those stories. Those are all really lovely tales. Stacey, I want to ask you, as someone who you didn't come from the dance music world, you obviously have a storied history as a director and from the film side of things, but you leapt in with both feet into this crazy world that we call home here in the dance music side of things. I feel like we're starting to get a taste of it already with those stories, but I would love to know from your perspective, what did you take away from speaking to these women and learning about everyone's stories in the film?
I think one of the huge instigators for me getting involved was, of course, the statistics, which were kind of pretty dire at the time. You touched on before the Annenberg one, which is, I think less than 3% of any technical or production roles are represented by women, 0.3 for women of color. I mean, the Billboard Top 100 list, the DJ 100 Top 100 list, it was like this endless kind of onslaught of statistics. But the real clincher for me that really inspired me was just the long, beautiful history of diversity that electronic music was born from. You see in the film the incredible pioneers, these ladies tinkering away like little mini scientists, looping things. And it's so incredible to see. But yet each of these women never knew about each other. We obviously didn't have the internet, but even so, like Susan Ciani says in the film, that she didn't even discover who Delia Derbyshire was, her fellow, electronic music pioneer from across the pond, till just 2 years ago. And that's shocking to me. That's unbelievable that you can be in an industry for so long without knowing, the roots of the pioneers. And I feel like that story is really heavily forgotten, more so when you start to dive into the genres. Techno, house music are born from the most beautiful, diverse communities. The whole philosophy is about inclusivity and diversity. The very means of electronic music is the, progressive and democratic. Tygapaw in Turkey and probably REZZ down, cracking a piece of software and getting creative. The very tools, it's not like you have to buy a very expensive guitar or whatever it is. The tools of it are democratic. So what I really took away from it, and especially as we look at this in 2021, post Black Lives Matter movement, post all these very progressive movements where we're talking about diversity, what better way for this industry to change than to be looking back to this really beautiful, rich history of inspiration? Opening up the musical spectrum for all sorts of voices and people's backgrounds, because sonically, that's only going to be a more interesting place to be. Just like from a film perspective, it would be a more interesting place to be. That was just a really huge outtake for me as an outsider looking into this industry. The film industry doesn't have necessarily the same diverse history that electronic music does. And I think that should be celebrated. I think it should be remembered. I think it should be used as a tool to inspire how we move forward post-COVID. We've had time to think, we've had time to analyze it. And I think, where it began was they were on the right track. Let's get back to that track somehow and bring some of those elements in, because there was nothing that was token about that. There was nothing that was forced. It was this beautiful authenticity. And we all need to express ourselves right now, trapped at home and all the rest of it. Like, let's let more of that out. That was a huge, huge thing that I took away from living within this electronic music space.
That's amazing. And I really appreciate the perspective that you provide there, because I feel like so often all of us spend so much time operating and thinking about the world in music, in the music industry. So you actually pointing out that, film doesn't even have the rich, diverse, inclusive history that dance music does. And it's a really nice thing to remember that, and serves as a nice little reminder. So now I want to kind of talk about things today. Obviously, we're all living in a really weird world that's hopefully, this era will come to an end sooner rather than later. But I think that an interesting kind of side result from COVID and us all being trapped at home and being forced to celebrate a premiere virtually and watch it virtually. It's been a really big year of change for the music industry as well. As we all know, artists and all of the industry has had to move over to the digital side of things. And what I found really interesting was, doing a little bit of more recent research on all of you. Each of you have had no issue kind of diving into exploring and being pioneers in the digital space as well. REZZ, you did a show actually early on pre-COVID, kind of like virtual reality style one with Wave. Toki, I mentioned that you have been doing this talk show and diving straight into the streaming side of things, as well as releasing NFTs, which of course is like the really big buzzy topic of the day. Tygapaw, you actually released your new album recently, which is such a bold thing to do, jumping into a new album cycle in this kind of weird, undefined time of releasing an album while you can't play shows or whatnot. So I'd love to know, from each of your perspectives, do you feel like the disruption that we've experienced this year in the music industry and the move to digital, has it leveled the playing field at all for artists? And I mean that kind of in a general sense, but also, for women specifically, or for emerging artists that are kind of finding that kind of next step. Do you guys feel like this move has changed anything?
I guess in terms of leveling the playing field, I'm not sure if that's exactly my takeaway from people moving into digital. I think it's more about a kind of platform that's been created that allows certain people to highlight skills that they have. Because I know that with the highlight of, or with people doing streaming and digital and moving in that direction, a lot of a certain type of people are not, I guess, primed for that. And especially like older musicians and stuff, they're like, oh, this Twitch thing, I don't want to do that. Like, not everyone's down for Twitch, even myself included. I say that because of myself. I had this big bias. I'm like, I'm not a YouTuber, like I got not even for a Grammy. It's just like these egos and these terrible thoughts that enter your mind where it's like I don't do Twitch, and me just associating Twitch with something partially in part it is, like a certain demographic of people, of kids with like head, I don't know why I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, having like these headpieces on and like screaming into microphones while playing like Animal Crossing or whatever, that's a real part of Twitch, and it's still a good part of Twitch, don't get me wrong. And yet there's this other side that wasn't being utilized as much, which is like the streaming, the music, the sharing, this interpersonal relationship with your fans that you can gain through the streaming space. So I do think that it allowed someone like me that's open to participate in a world I was unfamiliar with. And I guess I have the skills and the wants to try, but I know for certain people, it's not like you're going to see Tom York on Twitch every day, and it's not for every musician. But what it is good for is younger musicians, people that are having a harder time getting into the industry because music is so saturated. I don't want to say I feel bad for younger musicians, but I know it's hard for them. And that's musicians across the board of any gender or background. It's hard to be a musician. So I do think that the digital age, what we've been thrown into through coronavirus, has allowed certain people to shine even more. But playing field is more like, I don't know, some people can't play ball. So, I thought.
That's a great and realistic and accurate assessment, I would say. What about you, REZZ or Tygapaw?
Honestly, Toki just kind of smashed it with all that. My experience with this whole year in general, I've done a couple live streams, which I must definitely mention the absolute awkwardness of playing to just myself on camera. It is definitely an uncomfortable thing, but I've been happy to do it though. Nonetheless, the few times I didn't want to oversaturate with it. I think I could have done potentially a lot more live streams during 2020, but I didn't think that was like entirely suitable for me. I do ultimately play like a lot of my own music in my sets, so it would have gotten repetitive like very quickly. But I thought, I don't know. I definitely never I did do the virtual reality thing, but I think that was kind of different, like, I don't know. I'm not really sure what else I have to really say about this topic.
It's okay. There's nothing better than, explaining your own process. And I feel like that what you're saying is plenty is what I'm trying to say. What about you, Tygapaw?
Thank you so much.
I mean, same. In regards to doing live streams and not having an audience to play to is very, very difficult when DJing is about responding to and reading your audience. So it is just it's just a completely different experience when you're just in a room set up with a camera live streaming. You kind of have to like really motivate yourself to get into a good flow with it. So in the beginning, I really loved a lot of the queer like Zoom parties that were happening and I got booked for, and like I'm always readily available to my community, like no matter whatever, like wherever I get to in my career, like I have to be, and so it gave me a lot of joy to play those events like Masisi, Sunlight Fam from Miami, and like Poppy Juice. I think I just did one with Poppy Juice for Printed Matter, and they're great. I love doing them, but at the same time, I have a different position where I went in 2020. I spent it. I did like an EP in June, I think, and then I went directly into making my debut album. So it was just like, I was just like working constantly, just writing this, like taking on this like big feat, but because I had the time, I wasn't doing anything else. I just committed myself 100%. And I also, for some musicians, it might've been like a really a blessing. To me, it's a blessing because I can't write when I'm on the road. It just, flying all over the world discombobulates me at times. So I need to be in one place to write. So that really helped. The isolation really helped that process, and releasing it. It was the plan all along. So releasing with Nafi. So they had the slot for towards the end of last year. I mean, I don't know how it would play out if things were normal, or I don't know what normal is anymore, but like if things were, business as usual, it would, I don't know what that would look like, but honestly, it took the fuck off, it's like, sorry if I curse, but it was a really, really amazing response. And it's like continuously still going. So I don't know if that it didn't affect necessarily like not being able to go out and tour it, because right now with Bandcamp Fridays have been like a huge the support of independent artists who are who their fans are supporters are just fully committed to helping us during this time. So yeah, the music production I've seen on this end has been on that, more so than live streams. Like I've seen like really incredible electronic music, dance music being produced during this time. So
yeah,
that makes me very excited.
Absolutely. I feel like each of you are totally looking at the bright side of this weird period of being trapped at home. Tygapaw, you're mentioning that some really amazing music is being made because people are stuck at home and there's nothing better to do. And I think that we're probably already starting to see the result of some of that, and hopefully we'll continue to. And I think that, to Toki and REZZ, your points, I think that there's no group better to, be experimental and try new things than women. And especially those that are, at the beginning of their career and looking for ways to make the next step forward. So hopefully anyone listening out there, now is the time to just try things, knock the walls down, because I think that a lot of the music industry is trying to figure out, what we're going to do post-COVID. And now is the good time to let your voice be heard. We're starting to wrap up. So I just want to ask, I think, one or two other questions. As we anticipate live shows coming back and the world going back to normal, whatever normal will look like after we get out of this time, what do you each hope that, what kind of change, if any change, or what kind of behaviors do you hope to see from the music industry in regards to continuing this conversation of equality and making space and allowing women to have their rightful space in the industry?
I think something that I'm going to do and have planned to do and have been doing in general is, I think, collaborating with more women, and having more women on my lineups for, headline shows to give them potential exposure. And that's definitely probably the main way that I'm going to try and just support them in any way that I can, especially the ones that I really believe in, with their music and voices and stuff like that. Yeah, I think I'm just going to try and support in whatever way I can, and just do what I can in that way.
That's amazing. And I feel like I can already sense the excitement from your fans in the chat after you're saying collaborating with more people. What about you, Tygapaw or Toki?
For me, I would love to see women of color, queer, non-binary, trans women get paid their worth. I think the pay gap in regards to that is generally they'll always argue that they'll find some excuse to underpay us. And that's a part, that's a very direct problem that I've seen in my career and continuing to still be an issue. So if, that can change, that would be amazing. And I was I don't have the power to do that. Only the people above me have the power to do that. So if they can hear it, it's just pay us our worth, period, things would be amazing.
100%. I appreciate you calling out that issue. And a big part of the reason why I wanted to ask this question is just because, I feel like COVID shook the music industry, and sometimes people forget the problems that we were dealing with weren't fully addressed. So I hope that those who are in power, promoters, whoever it might be, will hear what you're asking for and continue that as we go back to normal. What about you, Toki?
Well, first of all, the major thing is just equalizing the gender parity, right? So there's many different facets of the music industry. I would say getting underpaid is something that is real. I can look at my streaming numbers, I can look at my tour history, so on and so forth, and then look at someone else that I hear through the grapevine might be getting a better slot, a better whatever. This is not meant to be competitive. This is just factual stuff, and know that they're getting put on more than me. And I was it doesn't make any sense. If the numbers are showing that, I'm of this value, even just numerically or statistically, then why am I getting paid less? And that should be this documentary part 2 is underpaid. And then we can go across the board.
On it. I'm on it.
But okay, so the many facets, 'cause I've had to talk about this a lot. So I feel like I'm well practiced in this conversation about all the issues with the industry. And there's the press, there's labels, there's bookers, there's management, right? And there might be components I might be missing, but of the people of the industries or parts of this industry that can make a difference, press can choose to cover more women, to cover more diverse people of any background, really. It's up to them because, you put someone on the cover that's going to give them a lot of attention. You can think of it doesn't have to be, just a random person just because they are diverse. People of quality, Tygapaw is an amazing musician. REZZ is an amazing musician. They are better than many other male peers, you know, but giving people who deserve the attention, management, you know, managers are mostly male too, but I would say it's probably there are more female managers that exist, I guess, in terms of percentage than at least artists, but managers can choose to search out female talent, diverse talent. And you can have bookers book more diverse talent as well. And labels can choose to release music from more diverse artists. So it's just a decision you make. It's just a decision a person makes. Also, us as artists, we can choose to mentor, you know, more people that are diverse. Like we are all representatives of our identities. So if I am an Asian female, that means some other Asian female will see me and feel like they can do what they do. And if that's something that I can contribute, I'd like to do that. And if I can mentor other artists in that same way, then that's something I should be doing. And I am actively doing, you know. But yeah, people need to just make decisions that are about the quality of the music and the work, and not about just putting on another dude.
Very, very well said. Very, very well said. Stacey, what about you? You know, obviously you are equally as knowledgeable, I think, at this point after creating Underplayed. What would you suggest to the music industry if you could have all of their attention right now? What would you tell them to do? Loaded question.
Yeah, very big call. Well, first of all, just to acknowledge what's been thrown out and suggested. You know, the way this project kicked off for me was before I even put any cameras in anybody's face, was conversations like these. And so for me, these are all very real things and all very real issues. And they're the same things that come up over and over again. It doesn't matter whether you're mainstream or underground or whatever it is. Getting paid, getting respected, getting listened to. Those are just the fundamentals of what it's like to be a creative person. And let's not forget as well that being a creative person also involves being very vulnerable, putting the very core of yourself on the line out there, expressing yourself in that way. And that takes a lot. So, you know, just acknowledging what everyone said and their ideas, and they seem very simple, but obviously this is a huge industry with a lot of money behind it, and the powers that be, you know, hopefully are taking this time over the last year to really rethink things. One of the greatest things that I see from, and I guess also just looking at this panel right here, I got the privilege to be welcomed into every single one of these people's homes, and to learn who they were as humans, and to experience what it's like to get inside their head as incredibly talented, creative people, not people who press a button and pump their hands in the air. They genuinely do everything. They are entrepreneurs. And also they operate in a silo. You know, so much of electronic music production is alone in a room with a computer or something like that. And what I think personally, knowing how incredibly talented all the people within the film are, is that there's a real opportunity and for all of them to come together as a community. I think there's real strength in numbers, knowing who they are as individuals on their own and how talented they are. I really think that the industry lacks a community for the women, for diversity to exist. We saw it a lot when we're on tour with the, you know, backstage with the bros backstage, and everyone kind of gets on. But because there are so few women, it felt a lot of the time like, you know, everyone was operating on their own. And I think that there's going to be a really big opportunity, not just to support each other as creatives and peers, but just there are so many vulnerabilities and there's so many things that you go through as an artist. And I would love to see, you know, what I'm seeing right here. This is my greatest dream, making this film. And I'm so ashamed that COVID happened, because I wanted a panel to happen. You know, I showed REZZ the film and she's like live tweeting at everyone, because, you know, I think you guys all operate in your world and you know of each other and you pass each other in the streets or at festivals or whatever it is. but to actually be able to put you all into one film was such a beautiful experience. And it just made me realize, like, holy shit, the world is not going to know itself if these women actually came together and, like, you know, were able to, you know, use their might and power and ideas and creativity to help change this. And I think this is what this panel is all about, putting out these ideas, giving everybody the space to talk, to speak openly, and to not just speak about, you know, being a woman, but to actually speak about being a creative person and the struggles it takes to be with that. And that's not to say that it's just on us women, it's on everybody to do it. But I mean, every single one of the people here and every single one of the people in the film are so insanely talented at what they do, not just as musicians, but as business people, as promoters, as community builders within their own world. I see every possibility that there could be really big change, and I'd love for everybody to stay in touch and to let that community kind of flourish, to use REZZ's word earlier. Flourish.
Love that word.
It's a good word. I couldn't have said it better myself, Stacey. I think that it sounds like, you know, we all agree that it is fully a team effort. It's not just on women, you know, to move things forward and change things. But, and I do agree that, you know, there is strength in numbers, strength in talking about it, you know, expressing what we need and what we deserve, especially, you know, the conversation about these are incredible people who are talented and deserve to be valued as they are. They are valuable people. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for this incredible conversation. I totally echo what Stacey said. And I think that, you know, opportunities like this to come together across different careers, different genres within dance music it feels rare. And I really appreciate, you know, personally, as I mentioned before, having come across each of you in different parts of your career. It is so awesome to see where you all are at now, to come together with you all to celebrate this amazing documentary. I hope that everyone watching will stick around, because even though the conversation is over, you will still get to see plenty from all of the people up here, because Underplayed will be streaming right here on this Amazon Music Twitch channel after this. And again, a reminder, if you watch the premiere and you want to rewatch it again, or if you missed something, it will also be available on Prime Video and in the Amazon Music app after the premiere. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you, each of you, for being part of this conversation and sharing everything that you did. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and happy International Women's Day.